Good evening, and thank you for joining tonight's telephone town hall meeting with Congressman Andy Barr. Congressman Barr will be joined by Kentucky Agriculture Commissioner Ryan Quarles. In just a moment, Congressman Barr and Commissioner Quarles will begin with a few remarks to give everyone time to join the call. This technology allows people from around the 6th District to join us live to ask questions to your congressman. If you have a question for Congressman Barr, please press star and then 3 on your phone. Again, that is star and then 3 to join the queue to ask a question. With that, I'll turn it over to Congressman Barr first to update us on the federal response to coronavirus, and then to Commissioner Quarles to give his coronavirus update.
Well, thank you, Tatum, and good evening, everyone. I am calling from Kentucky today. We are going back to Washington, D.C. next week, but this week we've been here in the district doing our work from our office and from home. A lot of conference calls with constituents and calls with colleagues around the country and Congress, and then with the administration to make sure that we're responding to the concerns and the needs of our constituents during this coronavirus disease and also the related shutdown of our economy. We are very, very pleased to report that the American people have made tremendous progress flattening the curve of the virus, even as nationwide testing has accelerated. Both are good trends, but you would think that the curve would not be flattening as testing goes up. So we're making very good progress, which means that we can reopen the economy now, and we can do so safely, consistent with the guidelines for opening up America again, which is a 3-phased approach based on the advice of public health experts. That doesn't mean the disease is gone or that there is no risk, but we're making great progress on therapies and on vaccine development as well. And I want to, before I really begin, I want to thank the people in our communities that you know, maybe in your own family, who are those heroic and selfless doctors and nurses and healthcare workers who have put their own health at risk serving others. Their courage has been on full display as we fight the novel coronavirus together. And as we're about to commemorate Memorial Day weekend, I want to also recognize the millions of American service members that made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our country so that our nation can exist with freedoms and civil liberties that really are the envy of the world. And as a member of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, I want to thank all those veterans out there who have served our country. And tonight we're very, very fortunate to have Commissioner Ryan Quarles with us. He's not only doing a great job for the people and the farmers and producers of Kentucky. I can call him a good personal close friend, and he's a great person. If you haven't gotten to meet him, he's a good person. He's got a great heart, and he really cares for the people of this Commonwealth. He's doing a great job. He's joining me tonight on this call as we focus on agriculture and to give you an update on our efforts to support our farmers, producers, and agricultural businesses, and to secure our food supply during this duration of this pandemic. And I know there's a lot of hurting family farmers out there. That this has been a particularly difficult time for America's farmers, and we want to talk about what the federal government and the state government are doing to help you all right now. This week, as you may know, President Trump and Secretary Sonny Perdue announced the details for the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program, or CFAP, to assist farmers, ranchers, and consumers in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. CFAP will use the funding authorities provided in the CARES Act, which I voted for. The CARES Act stands for the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. It was the third of 4 bills that we passed out of the Congress, money that comes down to the states and to the local levels to help us respond to this virus. And the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, that was the second of 4 bills. And in total, this provides $16 billion in immediate relief to farmers and ranchers to allow for the purchase and distribution of agricultural products to those in need. Upon the announcement of the CFAP program, I joined a number of my colleagues in signing a letter to President Trump urging that relief not be reduced by payment limitations that would harm family farmers of both specialty and row crops, ranchers, livestock, and dairy producers. Our letter specifically asks the USDA to use all of the resources at its disposal to maximize the impact combating these unprecedented challenges. Applications for the CFAP program are opening May 26th, and you are ready to go now on that program. If you have any questions or concerns about eligibility or the application process, please contact my office. We want to help you with that. Additionally, the USDA will use $3 billion to partner with regional and local distributors whose workforce has been impacted by food service closures to purchase fresh produce, dairy, and meat and distribute to food banks, community and faith-based organizations, and other nonprofit organizations. Over the past few weeks, I've fielded concerns about our nation's food supply. You all know this very well, but there are reports of poultry and meat processing plants temporarily closing their doors, whether due to decreased demand resulting from restaurant closures or in more cases due to employees testing positive for COVID-19. And that's really of serious concern because it's created a decline in demand, and of course for the cow-calf folks out there, I know that means lower prices and a lot of economic distress. So that's why I applauded the President's executive order to classify meat and poultry processing plants as essential infrastructure that must remain open, and states that the government will provide additional protective gear for those employees as well as guidance for them. That's a big help. Of course, many of these processing facilities are still going to be operating at below full capacity, so we're certainly not out of the woods in terms of increasing demand. According to the House Committee on Agriculture, America's food supply chain is strained as a result of all of this, but it is not broken. American farmers continue to step up and produce, as they always do, even in the face of this public health emergency. But the earlier COVID-related closures of some beef, poultry, and pork processing plants has been interrupting demand, and it's gonna be a while before we can get out of this mess. I will say that the COVID pandemic has highlighted the volatility in the market for the production of beef cattle. This has been around before the pandemic, but it's really taken a turn for the worse during this time. And after weeks of disparity between beef price increases and declines in both the cattle futures and the cash price, there are fears that this could have devastating long-term impacts on cattle producers. These disparities are not new. They cannot be contributed or attributed solely to the outbreak of the coronavirus, and the USDA has been investigating potential anti-competitive practices in the market since August of 2019. For these reasons, I joined colleagues in a letter to Secretary Sonny Perdue asking the USDA to swiftly release their findings from the ongoing investigation into meat packer margins. I had a call with the Agriculture Secretary on this topic, and during my call, which was a couple of weeks ago, he indicated that at least on an interim basis, they have not found any illegal conduct. But the final investigation has not yet been released, the report. Additionally, yesterday I sent a letter to the Department of Justice asking them to open their own investigation into the same issue and supporting Commissioner Quarles, who is our guest tonight, and the Attorney General, Daniel Cameron, who made the same request, which I'm sure Commissioner Quarles will touch on shortly in his remarks. I've been in close conversation with the cattlemen in my district and will continue to advocate for their needs. And to close my remarks, I do want to touch on the process of reopening our economy. As I said earlier, we have done a very good job flattening the curve of this virus, even as nationwide testing has gone up. And we're averaging about 400,000 tests a day in this country, which is a substantial improvement from where we were just 2 months ago, and testing has really picked up in the Commonwealth. The guidelines for opening up America again, that's the President's three-phased approach based on the advice of public health experts. Take a look at it if you want to know. We're lagging in opening up in Kentucky, and that is distressing, especially in rural areas where we really need to open up and get the economy going again. People are hurting. We have the highest unemployment rate in the country because we've stayed shut down for so long. And we can open up safely with masking, with social distancing, with hand hygiene. We can do it, and we can do it safely. This is appropriate given that nearly 2 million COVID-19 tests have been performed in the United States already, and that's going to continue to increase. Project Airbridge has been a huge success. I've talked to Admiral Polachek, who is leading the White House response effort on the supply chain. The FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and the Health and the Department of Health and Human Services, we've talked to them about surging up supplies. The private sector has combined with those agencies to deliver over 83 million N95 respirators, 133 million surgical masks, 10 million face shields, 23 million surgical gowns, 989 million gloves, 4 million testing swabs. And President Trump this week announced Operation Warp Speed, directing $10 billion from the CARES Act to cut down the vaccine timeline and accelerate the development of breakthrough therapies. More than a dozen promising vaccine candidates have been identified from more than 100 currently in development. And my office has created a list of resources and updates related to the coronavirus, which can be found on my website at barr, B-A-R-R, .house, H-O-U-S-E, .gov. If you have an issue you need assistance with, whether it's an economic impact payment that you haven't yet received, the $1,200 on direct payments that we voted for to get out to working and struggling families, or if you have an issue with your unemployment insurance that we can help you with, we appropriated $260 billion to provide additional unemployment insurance. There's a backlog at the state level. What you need to know is that the state administers unemployment insurance, but we've provided them ample resources to get folks through this time. But please don't hesitate to give us a call. Reach out to our Lexington office if we can help you with any of those issues. My Lexington office number is 859-219-1366 to get in touch with one of our staff members. And as a reminder, and for those of you just joining the call, you can get into the queue to ask a question by pressing *3 on your phone. And now I will turn it over to our special guest, Agriculture Commissioner Ryan Quarles, for his remarks. Thanks again, Commissioner Quarles, for your time and expertise. I know you are working overtime to ensure our farmers have the resources they need and Kentuckians have food on the table.
Thank you, Congressman Barr, and thank you for being such a strong advocate for not just our farmers, agriculture, but also rural Kentucky as well. We really do appreciate that, and your office has been fantastic to work with since my time in office. And we appreciate your support of the CARES Act, which you mentioned earlier, that provides really what we think may be the first wave of immediate support for our farming community. But before we get into that, I just want to say that COVID-19, as we all know, first and foremost is a public health concern and issue. What we don't want this to turn into is food insecurity and hunger as well. And a lot of times when you see natural disasters, economic collapses, or conflict around the world, famine and hunger often follow. Here in the United States, due to the resiliency of Kentucky farmers, we have the safest, most abundant food supply system in the world, and we are determined to keep you fed and make sure that our frontline workers keep us safe, but our farmers keep us fed. The United States is really fortunate to get out early to make sure that agriculture was exempt from a lot of the executive orders, particularly at the state level. It was so important that in those early days of COVID-19 that our industry was considered critical infrastructure. And so for a lot of our farmers and agribusinesses, they never really shut down over the past several months. We've actually kept it open for business as well. Because as we all know, farming doesn't operate on the calendar year, it operates off seasons. And right now, we're very, very busy out in the fields. I'm going to touch upon 5 or 6 issues very quickly, and then I'll look forward to the question and answer section of this call. And we'd like to start off with this. For the first time in perhaps everyone's life, they went to a grocery store and they saw something that maybe their grandparents or great-grandparents saw during the Great Depression, and that was this. Grocery store shelves that weren't fully stocked. That's an airy feeling. It's a little scary when you look at it. But in the grand scheme of things, I want to assure folks that there's plenty of food. It's just that we have some bottlenecks among the food production system. particularly when it comes to our meat packing facilities. Here in Kentucky, we have almost 30 USDA inspected meat processing facilities, and many of them are working overtime as we speak to process meat. However, a lot of what the Congressman referenced earlier about these bottlenecks are occurring at these very large processing facilities, mainly concentrated in the Midwest. Kentucky is the biggest beef cattle state east of Mississippi, but yet most of our cattle end up in the Midwest to be finished up, fattened, and processed. But here in Kentucky, we're trying to do something about it. In addition to the call for an investigation by the Department of Justice with my office and Attorney General Daniel Cameron, we want to remind our regulators to keep a watchful eye over the price of meat at the retail versus the losses that our farmers are experiencing, unfortunately, right now as we speak. In fact, the average loss of value for the cattle herds across Kentucky is between 30 and 40% devaluation of the herd. The same amount has been lost with our hog production as well, and we are trying to keep our poultry integrators primarily concentrated in the western part of the state open for business as well. We are continuing to ask for more PPE and testing at these facilities, and just last week I toured JBS, which is a major hog processing facility this side of Mississippi, and they're running at about 90% capacity. However, in the Midwest, we're only hitting about 60% capacity as we speak with beef processing. On the state level, just this past week, we set aside $1 million of tobacco settlement money with the Ag Development Board for any processor that wants to increase their capacity, expand, or create a situation where a new entity may set up shop here in Kentucky to process livestock. And so that could be a silver lining with COVID-19 in the long run. But the Congressman is right. There are tremendous losses being suffered at the farm level across Kentucky. Fortunately, 2 days ago, USDA released CFAP. I would encourage listeners who have any questions about the specifics of this aid program to visit farmers.gov. There you can see a plethora of resources, including tables that show potential payouts for different crops and livestock as well. This program is going to be administered by the Farm Service Agency. So that's not my office, but we are just want to extend a helpful hand just like the Congressman did. If you have any questions about that, please let us know. You can begin signing up this coming Tuesday as well. What we do know is that the aid is greatly appreciated, and we thank Congressman Barr for voting for this. We've been in constant contact with Secretary Sonny Perdue and his staff, including today. We had a conference call with 80-plus ag leaders across the state, try to make sure that we are covering our bases. Another question I get a lot is that rural Kentucky is known for great county fairs. We have 93 of them in Kentucky, a lot of them in the 6th district. Our county fairs for the month of May and June are more or less canceled. But we are working hard for the remaining of the summer to set up protocols and guidance so that if your county wants to have a county fair or a condensed county fair, we will be supportive of that as long as CDC guidelines are implemented. And of course, the big question is whether or not we'll have a Kentucky State Fair. And I am determined to have a Kentucky State Fair that highlights traditional agriculture and hopefully continues to have the 4-H and FFA exhibits that we all come to love and share. Just two more issues here before I'd like to pass it back to the Congressman. We have seen a bright spot in local agriculture the last few months. A lot of Kentuckians, including myself, are spending a little bit more time in the kitchen, and they're supporting Kentucky Proud. If you want to support Kentucky Proud, visit a farmer's market. Go to the local section in the grocery store next time you go shopping, or perhaps support a Kentucky Proud restaurant with our Kentucky Proud takeout program. If you have any questions whatsoever about Kentucky Proud, go to kyproud.com. We know that sales are up, and we hope that this is not a fad. We hope that a long-term effect of COVID is that there's a greater appreciation of not just agriculture, but a commitment to buy local as well. And the last point I want to make is that there's been a 30% increase in the utilization of our food banks here in Kentucky. As the Congressman pointed out, we have the highest unemployment rate in the country. And unfortunately, a lot of folks are having a hard time putting food on their table at night. Feeding Kentucky and the Kentucky Hunger Initiative, which we started a few years ago, have experienced record-breaking donations and generosity. And despite the tough times on the farm, Kentucky agriculture has really risen to the challenge. So far, we've had 560,000 eggs donated, 3,000 pounds of beef purchased and donated, 10,000 pounds of Purnell's Old Folks Country sausage, hog that could have been depopulated was then turned into sausage and now going to those in need. And we just bought 5,000 pounds of cheese coming from Kentucky dairy farmers just this past week, with more exciting news to come. So in that respect, I'd like to say that, again, COVID-19 is first and foremost a public health concern, but we're going to keep you fed. And please be your brother's keeper during these trying times. And if you'd like to help out a fellow Kentuckian, consider donating at feedingky.org. We'll make sure that money is used to help support Kentucky farmers and also help out those Kentuckians who need a little extra help these days. Thank you, Congressman Barr.
Thanks, Commissioner. Really appreciate your leadership. It's been outstanding, and appreciate the work on food security, especially during these times, and looking forward to the questions. So, Tatum, I'll turn it back over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Congressman Barr and Commissioner Quarles. As a reminder, and for those of you just joining the call, you can get in the queue to ask a question by pressing *3 on your phone. You'll be put through to an operator, and you'll be placed in line to ask a question. Again, press star and then the number 3 to ask a question. And with that, we'll open it up for questions. Our first caller is Nancy from Means.
Yes, do we have to vote by phone, or will it be open to vote?
Is that the question about the primary election? I'm sorry, ma'am.
Yes, I'm here. Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm sorry. What was the question?
Well, I've been watching the TV where it says they're doing mail-in ballots. Do we have to do that?
So that's a good question. My understanding from the Secretary of State is that no, you do not. Every county should have a physical election voting site. There may not be as many precinct places or voting physical voting places as there normally are. But my understanding from the Secretary of State is that every county clerk is required to have an election day where there is physical in-person voting made available. Now, obviously, there's going to be expanded absentee voting made available for people who, for health reasons, may want to vote by an expanded absentee vote, and you can fill out the paperwork to get an absentee vote for the primary election in an expanded access to absentee voting. But my understanding from the Secretary of State is that every county is required to have Election Day open and available in physical voting locations. There's been some counties where there have been proposals to severely limit in-person voting, but I think that may be challenged. So that's what I can tell you at this point. Commissioner Quarles, do you have any comments on that?
I think you hit the nail on the head with that. We do know that the Secretary of State's office is scaling up for a robust mail-in ballot scenario, but I think Congressman Barr is correct, is that every county will still have at least one location, if not more, to physically vote in the June primary.
Okay, our next question is from Violet in Lawrenceburg.
Hello?
Yes, Violet.
Hello.
How are you?
Well, I campaigned awful hard for you here in Lawrenceburg, and you came to our burgoo, and my neighbors and everything had never met you or knew anything about you, and you shook their hands, and they said you was the man they was going to vote for, so we got you pushed over the line.
Well, thank you so much, Violet. I appreciate that. And yes, that Burgoo Festival is one of my favorites, and I love it. And I hope that we can have some of these festivals, but obviously things are a little different with the social distancing. So we'll see how we're doing with this virus in the fall.
Yes. Well, my question is, my neighbor is 90 years old, and she draws $838 a month Social Security because she's been retired so long that, it's lower than what you would get now. And she is a diabetic, and she takes about 15 different kinds of medicine. And she can't afford to go to the grocery and buy a roast, that might last her a week when she cooks it, because it went from $6 to $13, and buy her medicine too. And she can't afford her medicine and food both. Go to the food banks here in Lawrenceburg, they're not giving away any meat. There's no chicken, no roast. They did give away deer meat that was, I guess, donated to them. But she can't eat that with the diabetic. And so she's really having a hard time because of that, keeping her medicine bought and her keep meat to where she can keep her diabetic under control and keep her strength up. And she's really depressed over it. And,
well, Violet, can I just jump in here? We want to help her. What I would like to do is, if it's okay, I don't know if you have a PIN and a phone number, but I would like for you to call us. We will work with you in God's Pantry and make sure we get her some food. Okay.
Okay.
I want to help her.
Where I've been going up there getting, once a month is all they let you have it, and they're only giving out one box. And
well, let's see if we can help. Let's see if we can help her. If you call my office tomorrow, and ask for Tatum. And Tatum's on this call, but Tatum, ask for Tatum, and the number is 859, and this applies to anybody out there who's got a pen and a piece of paper. If you need help, 859-219-1366, and ask for Tatum. We have good connections with the God's Pantry and their network out in Anderson County as well. And let's see what we can do for your neighbor about getting her what she needs. Until
this happened, she always got, meat enough, that sometimes I cook it for her and put her in the refrigerator because, like I say, she's 90 years old. And she wanted me to ask you if that $1,200, helped her a whole lot.
Good.
Wanted to know if they would extend that out for, 5 months, that we have, she hadn't got anything but that $839 a month. And like I say, she's got about 15 medicines that she has to get and got to copay with it. And it's just depressed her a lot.
Well, you tell her, and I'm glad the $1,200. Now that was a one-time thing, so I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be another one of those or not yet. The goal is to get the economy opened up so that that is not required. Of course, she's a senior citizen, so opening up the economy doesn't really matter for her and help her. But what we can do in the short term here is help her with her food, with the God's Pantry and try to get her some meat. And there's been a lot of generosity, as the commissioner said. I will let the commissioner comment too, because I know he knows a lot about our food banks.
Yes, thank you, and we will take care of you. So call Congressman Barr's office tomorrow, and we'll take care of that individual. And this highlights the stress that we're seeing at food banks in general. Again, a 30% increase in those utilizing them. And meat and dairy products are the most highly sought after donations at the food banks. And so that's one reason why we're trying to raise money. And again, if anyone, you just heard it here tonight, what's going on in some of our communities, if anyone that's feeling generous tonight, feedingky.org, and we can make sure that money goes towards purchasing meat from Kentucky farmers to go to our food banks. And if you are a senior citizen and you shop at our farmers markets, we are open for business. We have about 155 of our 160 or so farmers markets are open right now. And if you are a senior citizen right now, you can sign up for what's called the Seniors Farmers Market Voucher. This is a USDA food program which gives seniors a $28 voucher that can be used at our, again, 150 plus farmers markets across the state. This is a benefit that we can help you apply for there at the local level. And so if you have any questions about that, please contact my office. And that's another way to support Kentucky farmers and also support fresh, nutritious Kentucky Proud products.
Thank you, Violet.
Okay, our next question is from Ralph in Madison County.
Hello. Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, Commissioner. I reached out to y'all's office about this meat processing plants. I'm a Kentucky Proud member and a Homegrown Hero member also. I'm a active duty National Guard soldier on terminal leave, and I started up an LLC for a agricultural purposes for processing beef and hogs back in February. And when the first SBA came out, due to the time, I was not qualified. I missed it by like 3 days. And so still trying to drive on with that. But my biggest thing is there's no place right now that I can find for a small farmer to take a couple beefs, let's say, 2 to 3, and quickly get them processed, whether it is custom or USDA. I've contacted a place called the Local Connection there in Lexington, and they have different places they had sent me to, from Boone's up in Bardstown to Marksbury to the Summit there at Science Hill. And I'm on waiting lists and stuff like that. But to hear them talk, the small farmer is not going to be able to get in until maybe November, December, January, February, March, April next year. Is there anything that the state agriculture can do or federal can do to, make it where a small farmer can get in there and get him a beef processed?
Ralph, first of all, thank you for your service. I'll let Commissioner, I'll let you go first. We both thank you for your service.
Yes, thanks for your service, and thank you for being a Kentucky Proud and Homegrown by Hero member. What you're describing is what we're seeing across the state. These 20 plus USDA inspected processing plants are booked. Some of them are booked through January 2021. However, we're happy to make some calls for you around the wheel of Kentucky and see if we can find an opening for you. And if you don't mind, I'll give you our office number. It's 502-573-0450, or just contact our Kentucky Proud administrators, which I'm sure you know of since you're already a member, and we can try our best to try to find an opening for you. But it is challenging out there. Again, this is a tremendous support for local agriculture, but this is why we just set aside $1 million last week of tobacco settlement money to help encourage these processing plants. Most of them are mom and pop operations, which is great, to help encourage them to immediately expand their production line.
The only thing I could add is that, we've got the Chop Shop over in Wolfe County as well, and we need more of those facilities to processors, right here in Kentucky, obviously what happens is we have a limited number of these packers or processing facilities, because if you're going to finish your cattle, typically you'll send it where the grain is, out west. And, of course, we described earlier the problems that we're having with the bottleneck. We had a few outbreaks of coronavirus out there that shut down some of those processing facilities earlier during the crisis, and that really created a problem in terms of declining demand. And I know it's really frustrated for producers because they see, a lack of meat on the shelves. And we heard from our constituent there with the lady who can't afford to get meat. We need to get the meat to the consumer, and there's just a bottleneck to get the beef and the meat from the producer to the consumer because of the lack of processing facilities. I think, eventually it would be good, especially after this virus pandemic, to evaluate, how we break up that oligopoly out west and get more processing facilities closer to home.
Okay, our next question is from Sierra in Powell County.
We have a business, and we have employees that are being called back to work, and we're not really sure how to address the fact that they're drawing, as much right now staying at home as they can draw at work. So they don't want to return to work. So as an employer, what are we supposed to do?
That's a great question. That's and I didn't catch your name. Could you tell me your name again? Your first name?
Sierra.
I'm sorry? Sierra?
Sierra. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sierra, thank you for the question. And yes, I share that concern. We're hearing that from a lot of employers right now. We did expand unemployment insurance, and it was appropriate because we had, over the last couple of months, over 35 million Americans file for unemployment. We had another 2 million file this week because of layoffs, because the government shut down these businesses, and maybe did so appropriately to try to flatten the curve in some cases, but clearly it's caused a lot of unemployment. And so that's good that we provided that help for folks, and if folks need it, that's good. The problem is now, as we reopen the economy, as you said, the additional unemployment is sometimes exceeds their wages if they had gone back to work, and so it's creating a very unfortunate disincentive to work. But here's what you need to know as an employer, and if there are folks out there who are drawing unemployment, you need to know this as well. And that is that the federal rule is, and the Secretary of Labor has issued this regulation. But if you are offered your job back and you decline to go back to work when you're offered that job, you can lose your unemployment insurance. And that it's designed for people who don't have a job. It's not for people who are being asked to come back to work. Now, there's an exception to that. If an individual, a worker, has a legitimate fear that the workplace is unsafe because of the coronavirus, then they can continue to stay home and draw unemployment through the end of July. But that's a very high standard, and if the employer makes accommodations and provides for and adheres to all of the safety guidelines from the CDC and the federal government, then there is no legitimate fear. It can't be a generalized fear. It has to be very specific based on an outbreak in that facility. And so if it's just a generalized fear, that's not good enough. So if you offer the position back and your employee does not have a legitimate specific fear, and even if they have just a generalized fear, but they turn down the job, they are then not qualified to continue to get that unemployment insurance. And a lot of people don't know that, but that is the law.
Okay, our next question is from Jerry in Georgetown.
Hello, this is Jerry Bergenhagen. My wife and I are on Social Security, and we have not yet received our stimulus checks. I've called your office several times and have been told that the IRS is contacting Social Security because we do get those checks by direct deposit. But it seems it's been like 6 weeks since the paper checks went out. Is there anything that you can do to speed up the communications between those two departments?
Yeah, Jerry, this is a real frustration. What we're told is that if you filed an amendment to your return, that's one of the things that's slowing things down with the IRS. So in your situation, is that your situation? Did you all file an amended return in 2019?
I sent my check in to pay my taxes on one of the voucher forms before April 15th. So I paid my taxes for the year.
Right.
And that stimulus check would go a long way to help us pay for our home insurance and car insurance. So,
well, that's very aggravating that you have not yet received it. Are you in contact? Have you been in contact with my office? Are they? What they are doing is they're calling back and giving folks updates about where it is. And what we've done is we have contacted the IRS, and the IRS has not staffed up. They've, unfortunately, because of the coronavirus, they've furloughed a lot of people, and that's a real problem because they're required right now to be getting these checks out to people. And for folks who have had their bank account information on file with the IRS, most of those folks don't have a problem because they've gotten the direct deposit. To your knowledge, do you have your bank account information on file with the IRS?
No, I do not, and I don't particularly want to do that. I don't like the IRS being able to dip into my checking account anytime they choose.
Yeah,
Therefore,
I understand that.
Is in cash, but we do get our Social Security checks to our checking accounts via direct deposit. And I've been told by your office is the IRS is contacting Social Security and to get those direct deposit accounts from Social Security. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't. I've called twice, and they said, well, there were 20 million backlog checks for that operation, I guess, but it's frustrating.
It is frustrating. If you've already talked to our staff, so let's if you can stay on the line. You've got my number, obviously, because you've called our office. Again, it's 859-219-1366, Jerry. I'll tell you what I'll do. You can stay on the line afterwards. You can also call that number again and ask for Tatum tomorrow. Ask for Tatum. I'd like for this to be casework. One of the problems that we are having again is that the IRS has they've furloughed a lot of their workers, and this is another reason why we need to reopen this economy. We can do so safely, but the IRS is frustrating the will of Congress here. We did this so that, and most Americans did receive their economic payments quickly, but clearly in your case, because you don't have your information on file with the IRS, that slowed things down, and because the IRS is not fully staffed up right now, they're obviously slow to getting your payment. So I would like to take a more aggressive stand with the IRS for you and treat this as casework. But I would need you to call back a third time tomorrow and ask for Tatum to do this. And again, we will work to hold the IRS accountable for you and get you your money as soon as possible.
Okay, our next question is from Carl in Owensville.
Congressman Barr.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Mr. Barr, I believe I talked to you on Monday.
Oh, yes.
Yes, sir. I was just curious. Our group, I've talked to several of them this week, and we've got a few of them on this call here tonight. I know Commissioner Quarles and Daniel Cameron has sent a letter to Sonny Perdue asking about his investigation and the Attorney General Barr, pardon me.
Yes.
But what has after Monday? What has your and Commissioner Quarles communications been? Have you told him about our conversations Monday and our concerns? And I know all of us are kind of curious and just want to hear your comments on it, and if he knows what's going on, especially after he's toured the JBS plant and stuff like that.
Well, yes, and thanks for the call on Monday. And we have what we've done in response is we've followed up with a letter to the Department of Justice to support Commissioner Quarles and General Cameron's letter to highlight for Attorney General Barr the importance of this for Kentucky producers and encourage the DOJ to investigate if we're not getting any report back from the USDA. I also have asked the USDA for a timeline on when they are going to wrap up and complete their investigation. And if they continue to tell us they don't know when they're going to finish their investigation, then I'm going to ask for a phone call with you all, with the cattlemen, with the USDA to. Oh, we got a baby. Got a baby there. Hope they're okay. But to ask for a call so that you can express your concerns, and then beyond that, I am concerned about, even as we reopen some of these packers, I am concerned that there's a backlog that will continue to put downward pressure on the prices for the cow-calf producers. And so we will need a plan B, and you can go to the FSA right now and look into this CFAP, but we may need.
Oh yes, sir. I mean, yes, sir. There's several of us already waiting to apply. I mean, that's we were just curious, and because our main point was, and a big part of our issue is right now is not when you're going to see the bad times. This fall is and there's some people that really know this market a lot better than I do. And I believe we've got James and Randall Arnett tonight who own and run pair of stockyards, and they all even agree, and along with several others, the problem is going to be this fall, when these feedlots are full. And we just want to make sure that you guys in Washington know, because you're not in it every day. We are. We're here. We see it. We deal with it. This is what we do. And we just want to make sure that.
I hear you. I know it's a big problem, and I agree with you. And I've talked to a number of folks who know the market all the way down the line, and they see it coming as well. So we're going to have to provide additional support for you all, and we know it. And I'm talking to my colleagues about that as we formulate additional legislation. We want the investigation to pan out for us, but I don't think we can count on it. I don't think that we can count on that investigation resulting in a finding that's going to end up, in any way helping you all. So we shouldn't just rely on that. We need another answer. Commissioner, do you have any thoughts?
Yes. For those of you curious about this issue, to really sum it up in just 15 seconds, there's just 4 companies that control 80% of all beef cattle processing in the United States. And, you know, Americans love to eat beef. You got to think about how concentrated that is. So one good thing about the Department of Justice is that due to the Packers and Stockyards Act, it goes back to the 1920s and 30s, that USDA conducts investigations, but the actual action against companies goes through the Department of Justice, more or less. That's simplified. And so raising this to the level of the Department of Justice and Attorney General Barr in a very uniform way across America, other ag commissioners have signed on to this, I think is sending a signal to these companies that they really need to perhaps invest elsewhere. And just very quickly here, one of the silver linings that I'm hoping to get out of this is to maybe encourage a company of size to locate in Kentucky. We want to help bolster our current and existing meat processing plants, which we're doing immediately, that $1 million set aside. But in the long term, we need a processing plant that perhaps is actually owned by Kentucky cattle farmers in a somewhat of a co-op way. And there are conversations going on right now where you may have a farmer-controlled or farmer interest kill and processing facility this side of the Mississippi River, and that's what my office staff is dedicated towards right now. And just one last statistic here, the average beef cattle farmer is losing $200 a head right now. And these 4 companies on average, due to a Chicago study a week ago, they're making $700, if not $2,000 per head when they process that same steer or heifer. So the disparity is there, and we hear you loud and clear, and we're going to keep putting pressure on DOJ and USDA to investigate this immediately.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Bernie in Powell County.
Yes, my question has partly been answered, was why is meat so high in the store, cattle so cheap on the market? It's ridiculous that these meat processors are allowed to make a windfall profit off of the poor people. When you go to the store, I was at Sam's Club, a 10-pound bag or 10-pound roll of hamburger was $80. Now, there's no way that they should be allowed to charge that much for per pound hamburger.
Yeah, that's really the paradox, that's the inconsistency that's got everybody so upset, and you should be upset. It's not fair. It's not right. It's clearly not a functional market. I've been raising heck with my colleagues on the Ag Committee in Congress to say, look, you know, this is not right that you've got empty shelves in the grocery stores and high prices, but our producers are losing $200 per head, as the commissioner pointed out. And one of the issues is that there's a disconnect between the producer and the ultimate consumer here. You know, the cow-calf producer is not selling directly to the grocery store. It's got to go through these 4 packers that control 80% of the market, and the feedlots as well. And there's a bottleneck there, I think, in part because of the coronavirus, but this is a problem that predated this as well. It's just that the coronavirus and the shutdown of some of these processing facilities has really exacerbated the problem. So we're supporting the investigation that the commissioner is talking about, and we hope that at the end of the day we can get a long-term solution, which, as the commissioner pointed out, would be, you know, a cooperative or some processing facility here in Kentucky. The one thing I would say that's difficult about that is that if you want to feed them and finish cattle, we've got to figure out a way to get the grain here affordably. The reason why they ship out west, as I understand it, is because that's where a lot of the grain is, and it's quite expensive to move the grain, or it's more expensive, as I understand it, to move the grain east than it is to move the cattle west. But the commissioner can probably provide more information on that.
Again, my heart's with you. I go to the grocery store multiple times a week, different grocery store brands as well, different stores, and it's really not on the grocery side. I want to make that very clear. It really is this bottleneck, as we've talked about at length tonight. Again, the long-term solution here is maybe have a Kentucky-owned, Kentucky-oriented processing plant, but I want to give accolades to the Chop Shop as well. We just helped do a public investment with them just recently with increasing their capacity with what's called a wash cabinet. So, Eastern Kentucky has a bright future, and some of the best quality cattle herds in America come from Central Kentucky, come from the 6th District. So we're working hard on this as well.
And by the way, thank you, Commissioner, for those funds to help them with their water over there in Wolfe County at the Chop Shop. That increase in capacity for facilities like that is huge, and it's not enough. We know it's not enough, but the more we can increase capacity here, the better.
Okay, and our last question tonight comes from Kathy in Berea.
Hey, Kathy.
Hey.
Hope you're healthy and well.
Same to you.
Thank you.
My question was, I was wanting to find out, I just moved here a couple of years ago, and I would love to be able to purchase local beef around here from local farmers. Is there a website set up, or can it be a website made where you could purchase local beef or dairy?
Ryan, go ahead.
Yes, please, I encourage you and others to go to KentuckyProud.com, KYProud.com. From there, we can help guide you to what we call roadside markets. There's a lot of, they're with Kentucky Farm Bureau. These roadside markets, oftentimes, these are farmers selling what we call freezer beef straight off their farm. But I'll be honest with you right now, a lot of them are sold out for the reasons we talked about tonight. But if you would like to be connected with a farmer, if you'd like to be connected with any of our Kentucky Proud vendors, please contact us at kyproud.com. And my email address is ryanfquarles@ky.gov, and we can help navigate as well. We do have several small butchers across Kentucky that again, these 20-plus plants that are selling directly. And believe me, most of that is coming directly off Kentucky farms. And so we appreciate your commitment to buy local, even during a pandemic.
Thank you for your question. And Commissioner Quarles, thanks for providing that information. And
I appreciate that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say I appreciate your leadership in Congress, and I know there's a lot of folks from the rural area on tonight, a lot of people in the ag community. Andy Barr is one of our go-to people when it comes to everything agriculture, and we're very appreciative of your help. We know that even with the USDA program, we're probably going to need some more help, and so I'll be working with your office to try to advocate, especially for the hardest hit areas of Kentucky agriculture. So we appreciate that. And again, if anyone needs to contact me, ryanf.quarles@ky.gov. Thank you, Congressman Barr, and thank you for fighting for us in Washington.
Well, thank you again, and thank you for fighting for us in Frankfort, Commissioner Quarles, for your leadership and for your expertise. It was really helpful tonight. I'm glad you were here to speak to so many of my constituents who are ag producers and obviously struggling, having a tough time right now, given the coronavirus situation and the all of the dysfunction in the cattle markets right now that we're just going to have to work through. And I just wanted to end on an optimistic note. We're going to defeat this virus, and we're going to get through this. I cannot tell you enough, and I'm just so impressed with the American people. If you think about how this virus has affected other countries around the world is really fortunate to have America leading the war against COVID-19. We've got innovative researchers and scientists. They're the best in the world. They're working overtime to find effective therapies and a vaccine to combat this virus. And one thing I will say as kind of a closing remark for our farmers and our families out there who need help, whether it's that direct payment check that hasn't come yet, like the gentleman from Georgetown, or if it's an unemployment issue, let us know if we can help you with that. Call our office. And if you're a producer, the CARES Act that I voted for does provide this $19 billion in relief for farmers and ranchers, and $16 billion for the program that we've been talking about, but also an additional $3 billion. If you want access to that or need help with the Farm Service Agency, we can connect you to them. And there's another program that I'll bring to your attention. The Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program is through the Small Business Administration, and we've made it so that we've included agricultural enterprises with less than 500 employees. There's a $10,000 grant that comes with that, and then there's also a loan, a low-interest loan on that. So if you're interested in any of those programs, do contact our office. We can give you more details. And I'll end with this, Commissioner Quarles. Thanks again for joining us. We need to get to the bottom of the origins of this pandemic. We didn't talk about it tonight, but I just want to say that I'm proud to have been appointed to the China Task Force in Congress. China lied about the origins of this virus from the very beginning, and they put us all at risk. The Communist Party in China, their lies and their cover-up enabled this pandemic to spread. And our task force in Congress is looking to hold the Chinese Communist Party accountable for their cover-up that enabled the spread. We are very disturbed about Beijing silencing the whistleblowers who attempted to sound the alarm. You know, they underreported their initial cases. They manipulated the World Health Organization to spread lies about human-to-human transmission. Then they embarked on a scheme to hoard personal protective equipment and weaponize the supply chain of medical and pharmaceutical products against us. And over 90,000 Americans have lost their lives. You've got major problems in the ag sector. You've got a big economic contraction, and so we owe it to the American people to hold China accountable, and we're going to be working overtime over the next few months to make recommendations on how to do that in trade and economics and national security and in competitiveness. So we'll look forward to reporting back to you on that. And for tonight and on behalf of Commissioner Quarles, we want to thank everybody for joining us. I know we had a number of people in the queue, and I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to chat with everyone on the line, but there will be an opportunity for you to leave a voicemail for me if you just stay on the line. I hope you will leave that message and let me know what you thought about tonight's call. Again, if you need help from my office, call 859-219-1366. Thanks again for joining us. I encourage all of my constituents to continue good health practices for themselves and their families. Wash your hands, do that social distancing. We'll get through this. And thanks for the privilege of representing you and fighting for your interests in Washington, D.C. Have a great night, everyone.